This is really cool. Charles Schwab's CEO, Walt Bettinger, opened the vault to the Schwab test he uses for potential high-level hires. It's a great article from the New York Times, so let me read to you just a bit of it. It's really worth reading. A person's character, it says, is revealed during times of great pressure and distresses. A great way to test out someone's character is to observe how they react when things don't go according to plan. What if there is a way for employers to test our job candidates and compare how they react to unpleasant curveballs? Charles Schwab Corporation CEO Walt Bettinger has created a system for his hires. Earlier this month, he shared his secret with the New York Times. Before every new hire, Bettinger takes candidates out for a breakfast interview. And what he does is the potential employees don't know that every time Bettinger shows up early and asks the restaurant to purposely mess up the order in exchange for a handsome tip. For an employer like Bettinger, character is everything. He told the Times that his wrong order test is meant to gauge how prospective hires deal with adversity. Are they upset? Are they frustrated? Or are they understanding? Because life is like that and business is a lot like that. It's just another way to look inside their heart, he says, rather than their head. In the same interview, Bettinger shared one of the biggest failures of his life. He said it was one of his last college exams he's ever taken, and he ruined his pristine 4.0 GPA and taught him how important it was to recognize people who do the real work. After spending hours of studying and memorizing formulas for calculations, young Bettinger showed up to find that the exam was nothing but a blank sheet of paper. The professor said, "I've taught you everything I can teach you about business in the last 10 weeks. But the most important message, the most important question is this: what's the name of the lady who cleans the building?" Bettinger had no idea. He failed the exam and got a B in the class. He said that had a powerful impact. He said, "Her name was Dottie, and I didn't know Dottie. I'd seen her, but I'd never taken the time to ask her name." Bettinger shared that since then, he's tried to know every Dottie I've worked with. It was a great reminder of what really matters in life. Think about that. Two tests people never saw coming: the wrong order test and the name of the lady test. Let's talk about another important test here on the 260 journey. Another test, like Bettinger, we never saw coming. The words we all hated to hear in school is this: clear your desk and take out a piece of paper. What does that mean? It's test time. Paul does that to us in 2 Corinthians 13. The Apostle Paul goes Charles Schwab on the church people. It's pretty sobering. After coming to the end of 2 Corinthians, we are blindsided by the words, clear your desk and take out a piece of paper. Listen to the Apostle Paul in verses 5 and 6. Test yourselves to see if you're in the faith. Examine yourselves. Or do you not recognize this about yourself, that Jesus Christ is in you, unless indeed you fail the test? But I trust that you will realize that we ourselves do not fail this test. I hate tests, but this is one I can't take lightly. This is not a science grade or an English exam. This is about eternity. So now the big question: how do we test ourselves? How do we examine ourselves to see if we're in the faith? How do we ensure we don't fail this test? Paul tells us it's a test to recognize if Jesus is in you. Then how, Paul? D. Martin Lloyd-Jones said it like this: a Christian is a result of an operation of God, nothing less and nothing else. No man can make himself a Christian. God alone makes Christians. Since God does the birthing, we should also have his birthmarks upon us. So I think God gave us some birthmarks that are there if we're born again. Birthmarks that look like his family likeness. And these are found in 1 John. In 1 John, the phrase born of God is used over and over again, giving us, I think, is a birthmark. If you're born of God, then you have the life of God, and I think you passed the test. Let me just give you a few of those birthmarks that can help us to see if we're in the faith test. Here are a few verses from 1 John. How about verse 9 of chapter 3? No one who is born of God will continue to sin because God's seed remains in him. See, Christians are not sinless, but we will sin less and less because we're born of God. Here's another one. Chapter 4, verse 7. John says, "Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God, and everyone who loves has been born of God." What a great test. A love for people comes to those who are born of God. And finally, chapter 5, verse 4 of 1 John. "For everyone born of God overcomes the world." And this is the victory that overcomes the world, our faith. See, when you're born of God, your mind starts to renew and you don't think about things and assess things like you used to. Before someone is born again, the Bible says we are dead in trespasses and sins. The way you see if someone is not dead is to check their pulse. Is that vital organ called the heart showing a pulse? The heart has to be beating. And 1 John helps you know if the heart is beating. Paul's see if you're in the faith test is serious and reminds us not to ever assume anything. This quote from Soren Kierkegaard is amazing. He says this: "It's so much easier to become a Christian when you are not one than to become a Christian when you assume you are one." Thanks for joining the 260 Journey.